In the last 48 hours, markets went from war panic to a little relief. Trump paused strikes on Iran. Oil just pulled back hard. And Bitcoin wiped out over 400 million in liquidations in just hours. This isn't random. This is the market trying to figure out what happens next. In today's video, we'll break down the geopolitics, what the charts are confirming, and where the risk assets are about to move higher. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategic Markets, your place for fundamental and technical analysis all at once. Into our midweek session, we have Trump announcing a ceasefire. And like many of us, this was actually a bit of a relief that came into the market. So we've got 2 week double-sided ceasefire offered with Iran, which basically means the Strait of Hormuz will be fully reopened. What did that do for the markets, though? You might wonder. And well, Brent crude oil had a massive drop in the market, about a 17% drop on the week, which was massive. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, while I was away last week on holidays, I was actually tracking this graph pretty strongly. And one thing that I noticed, which is on the weekly, is while the Brent crude chart was actually setting up higher highs on the weekly candle, on the RSI, though, it was actually setting a higher low, which is known as a divergence. So it's known as an RSI divergence. And I was like, any moment now, this has to fall because this is actually like, this can't continue on for that long. And nearly but surely it did. And honestly, a 17% correction is a massive correction in the price of it. And, I have shared my views on this in the past. When we saw this initially a couple of days back, we actually saw the same action on the daily chart where we went higher high and then we were having higher lows over here. And then we had this correction. And I thought, okay, that might have been definitive enough. But then we kept setting this up on the weekly as well, where we were just setting up a higher high on the weekly, but then higher lows over here. And then near but behold, a crash did occur, or a correction at least. So be wary of these things and do follow them as well. Because look, at the end of the day, initially Trump had a genocidal threat. He said he was going to go hard on Iran and, nearly blow them to hell and kingdom come, to be honest, which is really tiresome. And he was going to commit war crimes on this particular aspect. But
Mhm.
more and more, as I'm seeing these particular things play out, I'm actually starting to realize that, hey, this isn't actually just about one narrative or one issue where he's got a concern with Iran or supporting Israel. To me, it's actually been fairly clear that basically Trump is following through with warfare on a shipping and logistics front. So, if you guys don't know this, well, in terms of military warfare, there's nothing that can happen between countries much because everyone's got nukes now, and that's just going to end in genocide. So, what is it that people now are focusing on is basically power over logistics and transportation, or basically your shipping warfare. And how did Trump actually want to deal with this immediately as he came into power? Well, one thing he wanted to do is basically make the life of China hard. And what did he do over here? Well, initially it started off with Canada. He basically made deals and tariffs with Canada, took that down. Then he went into Greenland. Basically wanted support from Greenland in terms of setting up his military operations there and the rare earth minerals. And basically he wanted China out of there completely. Similar with the Panama Canal. Panama Canal was partially in partnership with Chinese operation within a Hong Kong company operating it. After Trump got a review done in the Panama Canal, he got basically the Chinese associations removed from there. And then he immediately went on to put in new Swiss and other countries that are not related to China over there. Then he went into Venezuela. He took out the president so that oil connections to China are limited or are in necessity with power to America. And then he was trying to take on Iran as well, because Iran is actually a supplier of about 18% of America's oil. Now, was that something that he took on and it was too much to chew? Was Iran something that actually could not be managed? I think so. And maybe this is Trump realizing that, oh God, I can't do this. So I have to pull back now before my midterm elections in November. And That
Mhm.
might be a play over here or something or the other. But for now, it's a bit of a relief. And we got to take what we can get over here. The reason why I believe a lot of this is planned or in effect, and it's not just, a crazy person running around, as much as I would love to believe that Trump is doing that, it's because when I look in the markets, I'm actually seeing some things happening in particular that makes me believe that actually some financial powers at play want the market to go a certain way. Now, if you guys would have noticed this particular weekly chart on Bitcoin, we've been talking about Bitcoin on weekly for a while right now. And the interesting thing about Bitcoin on the weekly is that we were on this descending flag pattern. Now, with this descending flag pattern, we came over here, we got found support, we went up, and then if I show you guys over here, right this red candle over here in the 23rd of March, we closed below it. We were actually going to have one more close below it, right? We were going to have one more close below it, but then what actually happened? If you guys go on the daily chart over here, on this daily chart, in the last day on Sunday, we actually had a move up. Not even on just the Sunday itself. If we go on the 4 hourly, you will actually see that on the 8 p.m. on Sunday, we had this massive green candle come in, and then it closed above, putting Bitcoin back in the range of this bearish flag. Now, many of you who might actually know this, if on the weekly chart of Bitcoin, we had actually uh, if on the weekly chart of Bitcoin, had we had actually closed below this bearish flag, that's a massive bearish sign. And that would have most likely resulted in bearish action downwards, or at least testing the 62K line. But that happening in the last 4 hours, $100 million liquidation, was giving me the little confirmation that something's happening in the market that other people know, and they're moving the price up. So you got to look out for things like this when I talk about uh, there are bigger players in the market that are wanting to make moves occur. And Trump has something in mind that he's trying to do to move the market a certain way. Some things that we have to look out for this particular week, though, we have, Monday, Tuesday, it's pretty much gone now. We're going to get the Fed meeting minutes in a couple of hours or so. So just keep that in mind. There's going to be a discussion about the monetary policy. Your PCE and inflation is going to come in, and US Q4 GDP. Those are going to be big numbers. If they come in well, that could really move the market as well if Q4 GDP actually comes up higher. But the other aspect is the Friday CPI for March. So this is most likely going to show some inflation impact relative to oil movements. But now that it's cooled off because there's a ceasefire, hopefully the market prices it in as just transitory. But we'll see how that goes. Another interesting thing aspect that I really want to show you guys, where I know a couple weeks ago I was a bit concerned for being bearish, but now that I'm seeing the ceasefire news play through and whatnot, guys, the MACD over here is flashing very close to bullish. Also, on top of that, we have this red, basically resistance line over here that's just ready to be taken on at about 75K. I've told you guys before that I actually do believe that BTC has to get to 80K for some, what's it called, CME gap. I won't go too much into CME gaps in this particular video, but there's a CME gap for those who know it at 80K. And if Bitcoin makes that move to 80K, breaks through this resistance line, while this MACD confirms bullish, it's actually a very good thing and it's a possible move upwards for the market. Another thing that we have over here is on Ethereum. You can see Ethereum is on this multi-year from 2021, basically triangle ranging sideways. And we are again on the MACD flashing bullish right about over here, just about to flash bullish. And every single time that's happened, guys, they have been massive moves in the market. Last time it moved, highly from 1,800 all the way to 4,900 or so. So whenever these MACD flashes occur, if it actually does confirms, we actually have a very good move upwards. Even if you have a look at ETH BTC over here, again, ETH BTC, which is basically Ethereum strength against Bitcoin, when that flashes correctly, you can see that a move over here could be really good for altcoins because Ethereum is the ultimate altcoin. So if Ethereum moves upwards, basically the rest of the markets have to follow. And lastly, right now, if I'm being honest, Ethereum is actually holding really good strength against Bitcoin. And we can see over here this particular zone of 2,145. Ethereum's definitively crossed above that at about 2,255. And while Bitcoin's been ranging just below 72K today, Ethereum's just on the 4 hourly, consistently showing strength and just slowly making its move up, even while Bitcoin might actually being, ranging a little bit sideways up and down. So very interesting information and insights in the market. I personally, I'm not going to say I'm, mega bullish, but I'm definitely monitoring the markets and I'm optimistic, guys. So take that as you what you may. And on that, I'll pass it off to Stephen.
Right, well, thank you very much for that, Yash. As always, fantastic coverage and welcome back, mate. It was a shame not to have you last week, but I'm glad you had a fantastic holiday.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, let's get straight into it. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, let's go with that because you've actually done a great coverage with Bitcoin a few moments ago there. And let's go from where you've actually covered in terms of that Sunday move, in terms of the Sunday 8 o'clock around that time. Was that right, what you were
Yep.
saying?
Yep. So,
So that's where that time frame is there, where you actually had that move, the initial move off all of those support levels there. I'll just move that across so you can really see that. So there are a lot of those moving averages there. And this is looking at the 1 hour chart in particular.
mhm,
So looking at that, you can really see just bounces off all of those moving averages right there. So we'll just align those charts once again. So moving off there, you can actually see it's just come right off one of the old support levels there at 67,500, gone up and tested that 69,300 level that we've been talking about for quite a while. When it got through that level eventually, by about 5 a.m. the next morning over in US time, it established itself around about that support level, came back down, tested another support level there, or in terms of one of the moving averages, came back down and tested that support level again. You can see how all these support levels
mhm,
come into effect. It's really fascinating. And then after it established itself there, that's when we had that big, massive move up that you were talking about
mhm,
well on the Tuesday. So I'll align all of those charts there again so you can actually see them. But that's where you can actually see them on both sides with the Ichimoku chart on the left-hand side and the moving averages chart on the right-hand side. But this is the most important and fascinating thing I've really seen out of this chart, looking at the 1 hour chart. After it did that big move that you were actually talking about in terms of going through all of those liquidation phases, in particular on the Tuesday, look what's really happened. It's broken through this really long-term support level, which was a resistance level at that point, which was actually formed on both the 8th of February as well as the 10th of March, broke through that area, then went up and tested this other resistance level here at 72,246, couldn't maintain itself above that level, right?
mhm,
It's come back down, tested this support level again, couldn't break its way down below that support level. And now it's range bound in between those levels on the 1 hour chart. So look to see whether this support level holds and look to see whether this resistance area breaks. It's going to determine which way this goes. And then you have the prior resistance level back from March of 2024 to contend with there at 73,135. That's the story in relation to Bitcoin. The most interesting thing, though, obviously, in terms of Ethereum, is without a shadow of a doubt, the big resistance support line that we've actually had from April 2023. And you can really see the impact that that actually had. It came back and tested that area and then just shot off as soon as it broke through it. Now it's testing the long-term VWAP on the 1 hour chart in particular. But if we go back to the daily, it's testing the daily one as well. So that's the really, really important aspect that's going on there. And that's been bouncing off the 50-day moving average here as well, which is now starting to swing upwards. We've got a lot of moving parts, as always, in relation to these particular coins. But as you really alluded to as well, these are the two big ones. And especially with Ethereum, that's going to be the leading driver for all of the altcoins as well, which really haven't moved all that much, apart from a couple like Algorand and a few of the others, which have actually been moving prior to all of these moves as well. So there's quite a few interesting things going on here in relation to that. But let's not forget about the really, really big catalyst that's been happening over this past couple of days, in particular overnight. And that really has been Brent crude and USO. We'll get into USO in a few moments. But Brent crude overall has really broken down out of the 4 hour support and resistance lines that we've been really talking about over the last few weeks. And that should be really sparking up a lot of people's thoughts in relation to where Brent crude's going. And this is all in relation to what's been going on over in the Iran situation. So you can really see it's really come down there. But is this a major surprise to anyone really, out of all honesty? If we take a look at what's been going on over with USO, we were talking about this over the last week in particular in relation to the mere fact that we've had USO, for some strange reason, absolutely accelerating and skyrocketing out of orbit and going really, really crazy in terms of the actual prices, well away from the short-term moving averages.
Mm.
There had to be some cool off at some stage. Now, everyone was really worried about this and saying, okay, look, this is going to go crazy, 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 maybe even out up to the moon. And we even had those thoughts in terms of the short-term options, those expiring the end of this month, for instance. A lot of people doing the call option buying up to about the 200 strike price. A lot of people thinking, okay, doomsday World War III. Now that could have been a potential situation and a potential scenario, and this could have just really shot off, similar to the situation that we saw with silver a while back before it had that 30% drop. Interestingly enough, the implied volatility ratio of all of those options for USO in particular have actually started increasing, especially yesterday. They increase and they're now actually in the 90s in terms of that implied volatility ratio. So very, very high, which essentially means that all of the options that are actually being traded, the bid and the ask spread is actually widening quite a lot because of the uncertainty. So we're actually seeing that quite a lot overall there. Now, with the fall that's actually happening in Brent crude right now, so we'll flip back to that chart as you can see, we can now expect what will happen with USO, and you can see right here, we actually are having the pre-market trade right now at $118 compared to where USO finished trade yesterday at $138. So that's a drop of $20 overnight. With that fall, the implied volatility ratio may actually increase even further because there's more fear in that particular market there as well too, and then be more movement. We could potentially even have further movement, maybe even back towards the VWAP at this stage. That would not be unreasonable. And that could basically be seeing things go back to probably around about the $107 mark, maybe even down to the $105 mark. All of these kind of things could happen in terms of USO, and that may actually see things getting closer, bridging the gap between the USO and Brent crude overall in terms of the values. So a lot of things could potentially happen. There's still quite a big divergence between those prices, between Brent crude and USO. So watch this space in particular. The biggest thing as well, like we were alluding to on the weekend as well, is the volatility. Now you can really see even yesterday in terms of volatility, look at that. Volatility itself actually went down 20% in the overall market in one day. We're actually down here. You may not see it unless if you're only looking at the chart up here. It's actually down here. For the war to be officially, I suppose, over, if you want to call it that, we're probably looking really wanting to see volatility probably even down further to around about here. That may actually happen today, considering the fact that if we take a look at the actual indices and so forth, which we'll do in a few moments, but the indices themselves are appearing to actually be about to open very, very much higher in the pre-market and into the market as we actually about to open in, I'm just trying to think, probably in around about oh, an hour or so time, actually. It's not that far. So it'd be very, very intriguing to see exactly what actually does happen because it's currently just before 9 o'clock at this point in time over in New York. The US dollar, that's really starting to crumble again as well too, starting to come back. You can see it's gone right through that support level from December of 2025. and now starting to test all of those moving averages there as well. The bonds, the bonds are actually starting to actually test the support level here again as well too, but it still hasn't broken out of this range. So it'll be really, really fascinating to see whether or not the bonds actually start to get back up above here. It looks like they're actually destined to open at $87, which is about up here when market trades again in about half an hour's time. That would actually push the yields down, as you can see,
Mm.
starting to trade a little bit lower in relation to that there. Now, what does this all mean for the markets overall? Let's have a quick squeeze of what the indices are actually looking like they're going to be doing, or what they're actually doing themselves there too. In terms of the Dow, well, actually, we're starting to get some stabilization going on there. Where it's going to open, let's have a look. Okay, in terms of the diamonds, for instance, that's the ETF version of the Dow Jones. We're actually looking to open around about up here, still below the 100-day moving average at this point in time, and also below the VWAP, but much more improved compared to being below the 200-day moving average. The Russell, very, very prone to those interest rates, obviously, as we know. If we look at the IWM, it's looking to open very, very much higher, basically way, way back up over here and above the VWAP. So it looks as though the buyers are back in control in relation to the small caps. So that's actually quite an interesting aspect there. And that's probably on the basis of those bonds that we were just talking about a few moments ago and the fact that the yields are coming down so much. In relation to the SPY looks like it's going to open and pretty much smack bang on that VWAP, as you can see in terms of the green area. You can see that pre value there of 676, which is exactly where the VWAP is. So we could have a bit of a tussle as to whether or not the buyers and the sellers are really firmly in control, and also really have a look at the fact that that's below the 100-day moving average, being that white line as well. The Qs being the tech-heavy aspects overall there, well, it looks as though that's going to be opening up above the VWAP as well. So it looks as though the tech sector is back in favor. And that'll actually be tackling the 100-day moving average there as well too. So some interesting aspects going on overall. But overall, we are looking as though we are going to have a very, very much improved market based on the mere fact there's a lot more jubilant aspects going on there and a lot more positivity happening in the overall markets. What does this mean for the precious metals, though? Well, in terms of gold, let's have a look and see where the ETF is thinking of opening here. Possibly still underneath the VWAP at this stage. You can see from the pre-market there, just beneath the VWAP overall there, but it's still an improvement compared to everything else. The gold futures have been inching upwards, testing that VWAP, but not able to get through it at this point in time. Silver, on the other hand, is still a long, long way away from the VWAP, as you can see. So there's a lot more going on here with silver in terms of weakness compared to gold still. Not a surprise. We've been talking about that for quite some time, especially over the weekend as well. And in terms of the silver ETF, still a long, long way, even below the 50-day moving average, which, as you can see, the slope of the 50-day moving average is still pointing downwards. So there's still quite a lot of dynamics going on in relation to all of those as well. So with all of these changes that have been going on based on the Trump ceasefire, we've now got to take a look at things in terms of the changes in the levels that we're basically observing in the charts. How does this affect your positions overall would be the way you need to look at this in relation to the way you invest personally. Obviously, it's not financial advice that we can provide, but you need to take a look at this in terms of the way that your particular situation is for yourself overall. So have a look at the charts, see what story it's telling you in relation to your positions, and the confirmation that would be required in terms of, say, waiting for a pullback and then seeing if it goes off those levels in the direction that you're actually looking for overall for yourself. With that, mate, I'll pass it right back to you.
Well, guys, it's really uh, a eventful day in my opinion. To be honest, if Trump decides to back down and he wants to support his midterm elections and possibly set up a better financial narrative, I think he's already got a lot in the back burner with Greenland, with Canada, with the Panama Canal, with Venezuela, and possibly a partial front on Iran as well. I think this is what he could need to stabilize and then move upwards towards his midterms and securing that. And that could be good for the financial markets because he could need that to be able to say, I swayed the financial markets in the upwards direction, therefore this goes well for my midterms. But on that, nothing is certain, and World War III could happen tomorrow. So be careful and include that in your plan as well. But all in all, thank you for watching our video today and attending this particular session. If you like what we do, please drop us a like. If you think that we can do something a bit different or better, or don't agree with us as well, feel free to comment down below. But with that being said, if you're willing to join the journey, please subscribe to us, and we would love to have you on board with us moving forward. But other than that, thank you for your time, and we hope you a good one till the next session.